Dans la nuit tragique
In the tragic night of October the 6th, 1996, rebels attacked our Almira hospital in the Democratic Republic of Congo. 30 people were killed, patients were shot dead in their beds at point-blank range, the staff were unable to flee. They were killed in cold blood. I could not imagine that this was only the beginning of a tragedy. I had to leave Mea in 2019. In 2019, we created a hospital where I am working as a gynecologist today. The first patient admitted was a victim of rape who had received, who was shot in her genitals. The macabre violence saw no limits. This violence, unfortunately, has never ceased. On an ordinary day, the hospital received a phone call. A colleague was imploring me, please, send us rapidly an ambulance. Please, hurry up. And we sent an ambulance, as we always do. 2 hours later, the ambulance came back. Inside it, a little girl of 18 months of age was bleeding abundantly. She was immediately taken into the operations room, and when the operating theater, the nurses were weeping, and her genitals had been very seriously damaged, her rectum, by the penetration of an adult's sexual organ. We prayed in silence, my God, what are we seeing? Tell us it's not true. Tell us that it's a bad dream that we are experiencing. Tell us that everything will turn out okay. But it was not a bad dream. It was reality. It became our new reality in the Democratic Republic of Congo. When another baby came, I realized that this problem could not be solved in the operating theater, but we had to fight against the deep causes of these atrocities. So I went to the village of Kavu to talk to the men there. Why aren't you protecting your babies, your wives, your daughters? Where are the authorities in this village? And to my great surprise, the villagers knew the suspect. Everybody was afraid of him. He was a member of the provincial parliament, and he had exercised absolute power over the population. For several months, he was terrorizing the village. He had instilled fear by killing a defender of human rights who had the courage to denounce the criminals. And he thought his parliamentary immunity would allow him to abuse people and women. The two babies were followed by dozens of other children. When the 48th victim arrived, we were desperate. With other defenders of human rights, we reported all this to a military court, and in the end, the rapists were pursued by the justice system, and the rapes stopped, and the future, of course, the psychological, sexual, and future lives of these children were threatened. And what is happening in Kavu and in many other villages where massacres and rapes continue in Kasai, this has been made possible by the absence of the rule of law, the basis of traditional values, the reign of impunity, particularly for those in power, raping, massacring, torture, insecurity, the lack of education create a spiral of violence, an unprecedented spiral of violence. The human results of this were hundreds of thousands of women raped. Over 4 million people were displaced within the country, and the loss of 6 million human lives. Imagine the equivalent population of Denmark. Imagine the whole of the population of Denmark being decimated. The guardians of the peace, the experts of the United Nations, also suffered. Several UN staff members were killed. The mission of the United Nations in the Republic of Congo is still present, and they are doing what they can to prevent the situation from getting worse. We are grateful to them. In spite of their efforts, this human tragedy is continuing without the authors of the crimes being brought to justice. It's only the struggle against impunity can break the spiral of violence. We all have the power to change things when we are convinced that we have the right values, that we believe in the right values. Your Majesties, your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished members of the Nobel Committee, dear Madame Nadia Murad, ladies and gentlemen, friends of peace, it's on behalf of the people of Congo that I accept the Nobel Peace Prize.
C'est à toutes les victimes de violences sexuelles à travers le monde.
My thoughts go to all the victims of sexual violence across the world. I dedicate my prize to those people, and I would like to relay the voice of those who have suffered, my fellow countrymen. I take this opportunity to thank all those who, over the years, have supported our combat, our fight. I'm thinking in particular of the organizations and institutions in friendly countries, my colleagues, my family, and my dear wife.
Je m'appelle Denis Mukwege.
I would like to talk about Denis Mukwege. I am Denis Mukwege. I come from one of the wealthier countries of the world, and yet the people in my country are among the poorest in the world. The terrible reality is that the wealth of our natural resources, cobalt, gold, and other minerals, strategic minerals, are used to make war and to fuel violence and results in abject poverty in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We all have nice cars, jewels, gadgets. I have a smartphone. These objects contain minerals which are available in my country. They are often extracted in inhuman conditions by young children who are victims of intimidation and of sexual violence. When you drive your car, when you use your smartphone, when you admire your jewelry, think about the human cost of the making of those objects. As consumers, the least thing you can do, the least you can do, As consumers, the least you can do is to insist on the fact that these products should be made with respect for human dignity. Closing our eyes to dramas and tragedies is being accomplices to these acts. And those who choose to look the other way are also responsible for those crimes. My country is being pillaged systematically with the complicity of people who claim to be the leaders. They are pillaging the country for more power, to lay hands on wealth and glory. And they are pillaging at the expense of millions of innocent men, women and children abandoned in extreme misery, whereas the profits of our minerals end up on the opaque accounts of an oligarchy which has predatory tendencies. For 20 years, the hospital in Panzi, I can see the consequences of this poor governance of my country. Babies, daughters, young women, mothers, grandmothers, and also the men and the boys are raped in a very cruel way, very often in public, collective rape, with burning plastic or by penetrating their bodies with pointed objects. I'm not going to go into details, of course. The Congolese people is humiliated, is mistreated, massacred, and this has been going on for over 2 decades, and the international community is well aware of this. Today, thanks to new IT technologies, to communication, nobody can say, I didn't know, I don't know. With this Nobel Peace Prize, I call on the world to bear witness, and I exhort you to join us to put an end to this suffering, which is a shame to common humanity. The inhabitants of my country desperately need peace. But how can we build peace when you have massacres? How can you build peace without justice nor reparations? As I speak to you, a report is in the drawers of an anonymous office in New York. This report was drafted after a professional investigation, a rigorous investigation on war crimes, violations of human rights perpetrated in the Congo. This inquiry names explicitly the victims, the places, the dates, but it does not identify the authors of those crimes. The report was commissioned by the United Nations Human Rights Commission. It describes over 600 war crimes and crimes against humanity, and perhaps even crimes of genocide. What is the world waiting for to take this report into account? There can be no sustainable peace without justice. Justice cannot be negotiated. It's not something you can negotiate. Let's have the courage to look at these events which have been taking place for too long in the Great Lakes region. Let's have the courage to reveal the names of the authors of these crimes against humanity, to prevent them from continuing to martyrize this region. Let's have the courage to recognize the horrors of the past. Let's have the courage to tell the truth and to work on our memories. My fellow Congolese countrymen, let's have the courage to take our destiny in hands. Let's build peace. Let's build peace. Let's build the future of our country together. Let's build a better future for Africa. Nobody will do it in our place. Nobody will do it for us. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of peace, the situation I have described is a sinister reality, but allow me to say the story. Let me tell you the story of Sarah. Sarah was transferred to our hospital in Panzi in a critical state. Her village had been attacked by an armed group which had massacred the whole of her family, and she was the only survivor. She was taken hostage, she was taken into the forest, attached to a tree, naked. Every day, she was collectively raped until she lost consciousness. And the purpose, the rape was used as a weapon of war. The aim was to destroy Sarah, her family, and her community, to destroy the social fabric. When she arrived in the hospital, Sarah could neither walk nor even stand. She couldn't stop herself from urinating and defecating because of the gravity of her wounds. She also had an infection. Nobody could imagine that one day she would be able to survive. And yet, every day that passed, her desire to continue to live was shining in her eyes. Day after day, she encouraged the medical staff not to lose hope. Every day, Sarah fought for her survival. Today, Sarah is a beautiful woman. She smiles, she's strong, she's charming. Sarah has committed her lives to helping people who have experienced similar stories. She received $50 in order to rent a house where she can care for women who are suffering. Today, Sarah is the head of a small enterprise. She has bought a piece of land and she has received money from a foundation. She has received materials to build a roof. She has built a home. She is independent and she's very proud of being independent. Her story shows that even if a situation is difficult and seems desperate, with determination, there is always hope at the end of the tunnel. If a woman like Sarah doesn't give up, who are we to give up? This is the story of Sarah. But Sarah is from the Congo. But there are Sarahs in the Central African Republic, in Colombia, in Bosnia, in Myanmar, in Iraq, and in many other countries where there are conflicts across the world. In Panzi, our program includes providing medical support, psychological support, socio-economic and legal support, so that even though the road to recovery is long, all the victims have a great potential, ability to transform their suffering into power and to become agents of positive change in society. This is the case in the City of Joy, our rehabilitation center in Bukavu, where women are helped to take their destiny into hand. And they cannot do so alone, and our role is to listen to them as we do today, as we are listening Madame Nadia Mourad today. Dear Nadia, your courage, your audacity, your ability to give hope are sources of inspiration for the whole of the world and for me in particular. The Nobel Peace Prize, which is given to us today, will have real value only if it changes, in practical terms, the victims of sexual violence across the world and contributes to reintroducing peace, restoring peace in our countries. So, what can we do? What can you do? First of all, it is our responsibility of all of us to act in this direction. And acting in this way is a choice, a decision, the decision to stop violence against women, the decision to create positive masculinity which fosters sexual equality in both peacetime and in wartime. Acting is a decision, the decision to support a woman, to protect her and to defend her rights, to fight for her at her side in the countries where there is war. It's a choice to build the peace, to build peace in the countries where there are conflicts. Acting means refusing indifference. If you have to make war, it's war against indifference. Indifference is the big problem of our societies today. Secondly, we all have a debt to these women. We must all understand their fight, including the states, which must stop welcoming the leaders who have tolerated or used sexual violence in order to gain power, to come to power. The states must stop welcoming those who are responsible with a red carpet. On the contrary, they must trace a red line. They must stop the use of rape as a weapon of war. A red line synonymous with economic sanctions, political sanctions, and judicial proceedings, judicial prosecution. It's not difficult to act in a just way. It's not difficult to act in a just way. It's a question of willpower, of political willpower. Thirdly, we must recognize the suffering of the survivors of all the violence against women in armed conflict and support them in a holistic way in their process of recovery. If I insist on reparations, is because reparations will give them compensation and satisfaction and enable them to start a new life. That is a human right. I call on all the states to support the initiative taken to create a world fund for the reparations of victims of sexual violence in armed conflicts. Fourthly, on behalf of all the widows, of orphans, of massacres committed in the Congo Democratic Republic, and on behalf of all the Congolese, I call on the international community, finally, at last, to consider the recommendations of the mapping project. The law must be laid down. The law must be made clear. It will enable the Congolese people to weep for their death, to project serenely their lives into the future. Finally, after 20 years of bloodletting, of rape, and massive displacements of population, the Congolese people are desperately waiting for the implementation, for the recognition of the responsibility of protecting civilian populations when their governments cannot or do not want to do so. The people want to explore the paths towards a sustainable peace, which calls for the principle of free, transparent, credible elections.
Au travail, peuple congolais.
To work, Congolese people, let's build a state where the government is at the service of its population. The rule of law, which is emerging, capable of leading to sustainable and harmonious development, not only in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but across the whole of Africa. Let's build a state where all political actions, economic and social actions are focused on the human being and where the dignity of citizens is restored. Your Majesties, distinguished members of the Nobel Prize Committee, ladies and gentlemen, friends of peace, the challenges are clear, but they are within reach. For the Saras, for the women, the men and children of the Congo, I extend an urgent call to you. I ask you not only to award the Nobel Peace Prize, but to stand up and to cry out together. Violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo must stop. Too much is too much. Let's have peace now. Thank you.